Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of AIM Network's live stream. Without any further ado, here are the top headlines for the night. So, barely a week after suffering one of its worst global outages, AWS has crashed into the Agentic AI party at the reInvent 2025 event with the full stack counteroffensive and the Nova plus Nova Forge model for enterprise owned frontier brains, the Trainium 3 and 4 chips with GB300 Ultra servers for sovereign scale compute. Then you've got the Bedrock Agent Core with frontier agents like the Kiro and nation grade AI factories, with India emerging as the priority market for regulated, multimodal, sovereign deployments across IT, BFSI, GCCs, and the mobility sector. Our AIM Network Tech journalist Sanjana Gupta is capturing every moment from the ground in Las Vegas, United States, so that you don't miss out on the biggest power shift in enterprise AI. And then we have OpenAI is in advanced talks to anchor its India expansion on Tata's TCS HyperVault data center platform, mirroring its $7 billion Saline, Michigan tie-up with Oracle as a part of the global Stargate AI grid. It's plugging into India's Jamnagar, Vizag, Bengaluru compute corridor while raising tough questions on sovereignty, water, and tariffs that Front Page by AIM Network has been tracking from day zero. And amid central bank bubble warnings, zero haircut hedge fund leverage, and the big short level deja vu, Anthropic's push toward a $300 to $350 billion IPO backed by Snowflake's $200 million Agentic AI deal and a $13 billion Series F funding round and an explosive cloud code revenue growth may bring the transparency, real price discovery, and enterprise grade discipline needed to cool the overheated AI trade before it snaps. And then we have India, who has quietly signed a $2 billion 10-year lease for a Russian nuclear-powered attack submarine that cannot be used in war but will train crews, sharpen India's undersea deterrence, and signal hard-nosed strategic autonomy with Moscow just as Vladimir Putin lands in Delhi. And of course, Trump's 50% tariffs and oil pressure also kicking in, New Delhi is going to rewrite its India-Russia partnership for a multipolar Indian Ocean Century world. Good evening. This is Front Page by AIM Network, India's video-first newsroom for AI, infrastructure, and the new power games of this decade. Tonight, we break down why OpenAI's India expansion is likely to get a Tata push, how it ties to Stargate, and what it means for the India versus the United States race in the AI data empire. So besides announcing Code Red alongside releasing a reasoning model next week, which was covered extensively here on Front Page, it was codenamed Garlic and laying intelligence one model at a time since GPT-4o. Guys, remember, again, Front Page has been on this story since day zero. So you got from Jamnagar versus Stargate to Google Adani's 1.25 lakh crore AI hub in Vizag to NTT's new AI-ready campus in Devanahalli. With all of this, the Tata piece has finally entered the board. Let's decode it. Before that, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is quite important for all of you, given how India is the largest market for OpenAI outside the United States. Remember, the company currently houses more than 800 million users globally. But according to an exclusive report in the Economic Times, OpenAI is in advanced discussions with the Tata Group, specifically TCS, Tata Consulting Services HyperVault data center platform, to anchor its India expansion. Here's the core of the deal as reported. So OpenAI does not want to own land or buildings in India. It simply wants capacity, hundreds of megawatts of high density compute on tap. And TCS HyperVault is building a gigawatt scale data center footprint over the next decade. It's backed by investors like the TPG across multiple Indian locations. And OpenAI could become one of its anchor tenants, effectively a long-term wholesale customer for AI-grade racks and power. And OpenAI strives for the Tata hand to, crucially, you got to understand that Tata is not chasing equity in OpenAI. They don't want a flashy cap table entry. They want to be the railway and the power company underneath OpenAI's India presence. which is the preferred infrastructure partner that builds rent for the next 20 to 30 years. So OpenAI strives for Tata hand to, in simple words, OpenAI should bring the models and Tata should bring the megawatts. So if this closes, you're looking at something like OpenAI for countries, but an India edition that is running on a Tata, which is TCS backbone, instead of OpenAI coming here and trying their own and operate on the Indian infra all by itself. So now let's zoom out and take a pause because barely a month ago, OpenAI and Oracle announced plans for a $7 billion data center in the Saline Township at Michigan. It's roughly half an hour from the University of Michigan, and the campus is expected to deliver around 4.5 gigawatts of power to Stargate. Remember, Stargate is OpenAI's mega compute program for frontier AI models, and is being pitched as the largest economic project in Michigan's history, with thousands of construction jobs and hundreds of permanent roles, but also massive local concerns about the water use, grid stress, and the housing prices. So, why am I talking about this? Why does a farmland in Saline, Michigan matter for India? Because it shows you OpenAI's new playbook, which is to pick a strategic region, pair it up with a heavyweight infrastructure player. In the US, it's Oracle. Here, it's going to be TCS. It's going to build multi-gigawatt compute campuses tied directly to Stargate. Now, again, apply all of those components in the template to India. In the US, you have Oracle plus Saline. In Europe, you have Acre and Enscale type partners in Norway. In India, very likely it's going to be Tata and the TCS HyperVault if the ET report stands, of course. So clearly, OpenAI is trying to build an AI grid, a global mesh of high density compute hubs, each powered by a local industrial giant, all of it connected back and plugged into Stargate. Now, the real question that many of you might be asking is that what does India want from this grid? Does it mean just cheaper ChatGPT or a real say in how this infrastructure is built, powered, and governed? Take a look at India's map. You got Jamnagar, Vizag, Bengaluru, and now Tata coming into the picture of the compute infrastructure. And the AI infrastructure grid has expanded super fast in the last 18 months. Take a look at Jamnagar, Gujarat, because you got Reliance AI Fortress with Google and Meta landing subsea cables and AI compute. Then you got Vishakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, Google and Adani's $15 billion, 1 gigawatt AI data center campus is Google's largest AI hub outside the United States. Then regions like Navi Mumbai and Noida. You got local player Utah's sovereign AI campus with 8,000 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs powering models like our very own Server AI. Then, right here in Devanelli, Bengaluru, you got NTT Global Data Centers 100 megawatt Bengaluru 4 campus with 67.2 megawatt critical IT load and a 220 kilovolt substation. Now, an entirely new node could join this map because you got the TCS HyperVault, which is again Tata's gigawatt scale data center platform across Mumbai, Chennai, Karnataka, and more, with OpenAI as a potential flagship tenant if the deal closes, of course. So, taken together, India's AI mesh now has three overlapping pillars, that is. You got the global cloud giants, which is Google, Japan's NTT, and Oracle, and the Indian infrastructure major players like Adani, Reliance, Tata, Iota, TCS, and Cefi. Then, of course, you've got the frontier model labs. You've got OpenAI, Meta, Anthropic, and others linking their compute to this network of infrastructure players. And this might emerge as the backbone of India's AI economy. Because for OpenAI, Tata is the safest, least controversial partner in India. Because look, Tata as a company has a deep trust with regulators, enterprises, and governments. And TCS, as we all know, already runs core systems for banks, airlines, telecom companies, and public infrastructure. The Tata Group goes beyond and also controls power, steel, telecom, logistics, and software. Everything needed to get an AI grid run right in a proper way. So OpenAI's pitch right here is simple. Give us one Tata scale pipe of power and racks. We'll run the models by ourselves. Look at what India gains. They're going to gain jobs and capital expenditure because US examples like Michigan show that 2,500 plus construction jobs, 450 permanent roles, and 1,500 surrounding community jobs, all for a single campus. And India could now see this across multiple states. Then, of course, you got components like latency and reliability because running workloads inside India reduces the cable dependency, it cuts the geopolitical risk, and improves performance of your experience. And this signals power because India becomes a hosting ground for the world's top AI models. But India must ask the hard question. Hyperscaler data centers consume huge water volumes and can strain local power grids. And some US regions also saw electricity bills jump over 200%. And places like Saline faced backlash over fast track power approvals without public hearings. So if OpenAI and Tata build something similar in India, these issues can't of course be afterthoughts, because India's advantage is that, look, we're building second, not first. We can learn from the global mistakes and design better rules around tariffs, renewable energy, water use, and public consultation. Again, folks, we've covered this extensively here on Front Page with experts voicing their thoughts, so make sure to check it out. And a detailed deep dive with myself, a debunked segment as well. Make sure to check all of them out. So let's go back. In one of our earlier Front Page episodes, Yota CEO Sunil Gupta said something that's quite important. Sovereignty doesn't mean blocking foreign technology, it means welcoming companies like OpenAI and Nvidia, but ensuring Indians control the data, jobs, and its own destiny. And the last line is the heart of tonight's story, because if OpenAI runs its India workloads on Tata TCS HyperVault, they're not just asking, is OpenAI coming to India? They're asking who controls the levers. Is it going to be Tata, OpenAI, or a mix of India, AI, and US policy? And where does our critical data sit? In a regulated Indian region, or effectively in a US controlled AI stack just with an Indian zip code? And of course, do our Indian startups and researchers get affordable access to this compute? Or does it become a closed door elite cloud for just a handful of global customers? Look, at the same time, India is doubling down on its own sovereign stack. You've got the India AI mission, 40,000 plus GPUs through players like Yota, powering models like Servo AI, Socket Labs, Bharat Gen, and others. Then you have Google Adani's 1 gigawatt hub in Vizag, riding on green energy and subsea cables. Then, of course, the newly inaugurated NTT's Bengaluru 4 campus, adding 67.2 megawatts of AI ready IT load near the airport. So if Tata plus OpenAI joins this grid, India effectively has three parallel rails. You've got the India-led sovereign infra with Yota and the India AI mission, of course. Then joint ventures with global hyperscalers like Google, Adani, and NTT, for examples. Then model labs like OpenAI docking into the infra giants like Tata and maybe other players later. So the risk is overlap without strategy, and the opportunity is orchestration, where India uses all three rails to become not just a user of AI, but one of the core switchboards of the world's AI power grid. So, folks, tell us in the comments, should India welcome OpenAI startup powered expansion as a strategic win, or insist on a much tougher rules around water, power, tariffs, data before we plug into Stargate? This is Front Page by AIM TV. Like, share, and subscribe. Always remember, think AI, think AIM. Look, everyone's calling it a bubble. Central banks are warning that AI stocks look stretched. Hedge funds are borrowing with zero haircuts. Michael Burry, aka the original Big Shot, is back on podcast saying that this looks like 2000 all over again. Right in the middle of this madness, you heard Anthropic, the company behind Claude, is going to prepare to go public at a $300 to $350 billion valuation, potentially before OpenAI. And tonight on Front Page by AIM, we're asking a strange question. Could Anthropic's IPO actually save the AI bubble from bursting, that too in an ugly way? So instead of a chaotic crash, could one brutally transparent listing force some sanity into the AI trade? Look, before we dive deep and dive in, of course, gotta tell you again and again, like, share, and subscribe. You wouldn't want to miss out on any of these updates, because this is Front Page by AIM Network. So let's go. And the Bank of England says that AI-centered tech valuations are now materially stretched, nearing the dot-com levels. Economist Raghuram Rajan warns that easy credit and federal rate cuts are exactly when hidden risks build. And the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, is flagging hedge funds using zero haircut leverage on government bonds. Then you've got Michael Burry says that the current AI frenzy looks a lot again like the dot-com bubble and could end in a long grinding downturn. Not too much cheap money, too few AI names, very thin transparency, like the 1999 pattern repeating all over again. Now enter Anthropic. Look, in just 18 months, Anthropic has repositioned itself squarely as the enterprise cloud company. It raised $13 billion Series F at a $183 billion valuation, backed by Iconic, Fidelity, BlackRock, T Rowe, QIA, Ontario Teachers, and other funds. And its run rate revenue jumped from around $1 billion to $5 billion in 2025. That makes it one of the fastest growing tech firms ever. It now serves 300,000 plus business customers with around 100K enterprise accounts. Up to, that growth is somewhere around 7 times year over year. And Cloud Opus 4.5 is positioned as its strongest model yet, tuned for coding, long horizon tasks, reasoning and agentic workflows, and it's available across all major clouds. Not to forget, Anthropic is also building a deep developer plus infrastructure moat because Cloud Code hit a $1 billion run rate in just 6 months, now used by the big names like Netflix, Spotify, Salesforce, KPMG, and more. It acquired Bun, the ultra fast JavaScript runtime, promising to keep it open source under MIT license, and it signed a 200 million multi cloud deal with Snowflake, bringing Claude directly into top enterprise data environments. So, with around, let's say, $13 billion of fresh capital and another private round rumored to value the company at $300 to $350 billion, a mega IPO is the obvious next step. As we've said it before, Claude wins not by flash, but by enterprise reliability, safety, interpretability, and all the boring advantage that scales. That matters when you stop and step into the public markets. Now, to the headline that all of you have been waiting for, because according to multiple reports, Anthropic has hired the law firm Wilson Sonsini. Remember, the same firm that took Google, Lyft, and other major tech names public. It started informal conversations with the top global investment banks about a potential IPO in like 2026. And, we're telling you the official line that Anthropic is saying. The company says that we haven't made any decisions about when or even whether to go public, while simultaneously behaving exactly like a pre-IPO tech giant because they're claiming they're audited, buttoned up, and investor ready. Remember, at the same time, Anthropic is negotiating a new private round at up to $300 to $350 billion of valuation. Nvidia has pledged around $10 billion, Microsoft another $5 billion, with Anthropic committing $30 billion in Azure cloud spend over the last few years. I mean, it already has huge compute deals across AWS, Google Cloud, again, including an October agreement with Google that covers more than 1 gigawatt of compute and a separate $50 billion data center investment at FluidStack facilities. Ooh, look, this is not a side listing. It's a stake in the ground because if Anthropic pulls this off, guys, I think it could be the first pure play frontier AI lab to list publicly at the mega cap scale and do it before OpenAI. That timing is quite critical for the bubble story me and you're interested about. And this part is important because just days during which the IPO chatter broke, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei took a very public dig at OpenAI and Google at the NYT Dealbook Summit. We don't do code reds. Remember code red and OpenAI? He said that while consumer AI giants whip up crisis launches every 2 weeks, Anthropic has no consumer race to fight, no emergency feature drops, no beat OpenAI by Thursday sort of pressure. Instead, their entire strategy is enterprise first, reliability first, long horizon research tasks, products purpose built for finance, energy, retail, biomedicine, and manufacturing industries, and developer tools like Claude Code, which turn out to be the fastest growing workload in the AI ecosystem. Dario even said something unusually blunt for an industry of this sort. Some players are YOLOing their way into massive capital spending. If they mistime this even slightly, bad things could happen. Of course, he didn't name names, but the world heard OpenAI between the lines. This moment matters for the IPO narrative because it signals that Anthropic, for one, sees the bubble risk, they refuse to join the consumer hype cycles, they're positioning themselves as the responsible frontier lab. And remember, their revenues are expected to hit $8 to $10 billion this year. They're coming from enterprise, not hype and funny subscriptions. It also reinforces the key point, which is driving tonight's episode, that Anthropic, again, is not listing to cash out, they're listing to differentiate. And that's exactly what makes this IPO different from every .com era mega listing. many assume an IPO would inflate the bubble. The real argument is, I think, quite the opposite, because a public company like Anthropic could reduce the systematic risks that are involved. Because let's think about it. Number one, it forces the real price discovery. Many people are seeing today's AI valuations sit in private rounds, marked up by late stage funds and hyperscalers with very little scrutiny. Classic bubble conditions. So, a public listing would put a daily, transparent price on a frontier lab based on metrics like revenue, margins, and guidance, creating a benchmark for companies like OpenAI and everyone else in the ecosystem. And a gradual repiercing via one big IPO is safer than a sudden, oh, everything is overpriced sort of crash. And number two, guys, it shifts the narrative from hype to unit economics, because public markets, they demand answers on metrics like, margins for cloud code and let's say the model like Opus 4.5. Your GPU and cloud costs all need to be revealed, or your enterprise payback periods, R&D sustainability, and answers to these questions don't kill AI growth. They're going to normalize it, because a profitable, high growth public Anthropic gives investors a very sane reference point instead of a $1 trillion total addressable market fantasy. The other factor is that it spreads AI risk beyond big tech. Because think about it. Right now, AI exposure sits concentrated inside Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet, Amazon, and just a few huge private funds. A public Anthropic lets pension funds, sovereign bonds, mutual funds, and retail investors buy a transparent AI, pure play, diffusing concentration risk. It acts like a pressure valve away from the mega caps. Then the other factor, it triggers a very disciplined race with OpenAI. So OpenAI is struggling with a slowed ChatGPT growth. Again, we discussed that on front page, Code Red, remember? It's paused some product lines and it's facing the pressure after Google's Gemini 3 wave. So if Anthropic lists first and shows faster growth, or let's say, cleaner enterprise economics and a sustainable multiple, it forces the industry to ask, look, what is the right valuation and the business model for an AI lab like Anthropic? So Anthropic becomes the yardstick of measurement. Look, this is something the dot-com era never had. And ironically, that discipline may help stabilize companies like OpenAI too. But look, to be fair, there's also a flip side. If Anthropic lists at $300 to $350 billion, trades up aggressively, and is then followed by an OpenAI IPO that's targeting $1 trillion, followed by a wave of new AI infrastructure listings, this could lead to more rate cuts and even looser liquidity, and we could even get a bigger blow off top. And that's the nightmare scenario Michael Burry and all the other central banks are worried about. The market believes that AI can only go up until it doesn't. So the key isn't just that Anthropic is going to list for an IPO, but will the IPO guide to a sustainable growth, or once again we sell we'll all eat the world kind of a story? Yeah, the question is that, does it keep raising huge private funds even after listing, or use the IPO to normalize some capital flows? Then of course, what about regulators? Are they going to push for better disclosure on AI risk, safety and concentration, or treat it like another generic tech IPO? There are a lot of questions, but remember, the IPO itself will not and cannot be a magic shield. But here's what it can be. It can be the moment when AI valuations move from fantasy to a negotiated, sane reality. So guys, tell us in the comments below, should Anthropic rush into the public markets and force a reality check? Or wait, risk bigger froth, and maybe a harder landing later? This is Front Page by AIM Network. Hope you enjoyed the segment. Like, share and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. From Russia with a nuclear submarine. As Vladimir Putin lands in Delhi for the first India visit since the Ukraine war, that is, New Delhi has quietly closed a $2 billion deal to lease a nuclear-powered attack submarine from Moscow. Yep, you heard that right, a nuclear submarine. It's the most secretive, most political weapon a navy can operate. But here's the twist. Under the lease, India cannot use this machine in war. So why spend $2 billion on a submarine that can't fight fire in a combat? And why do it now? Just as US President Donald Trump slams 50% tariffs on Indian goods and tells Russia to stop buying Russian oil. I mean, tells India to stop buying Russian oil, that is. Tonight on Front Page, we break down why this submarine is not about one weapon, it's about India's place in a very different world. You're watching Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin. Let's start with the basics, guys. India will lease a nuclear powered attack submarine from Russia for about $2 billion. And the submarine will be delivered in roughly 2 years, but because of the complexity, it could slip further. And the lease is expected to run 10 years, similar to India's previous Russian nuclear sub leases. And also, under the agreement, the submarine is for training and deterrence but cannot be used for active war. So, think of it as a nuclear submarine finishing school for the Indian Navy. And remember, this is not the first time. India has done this twice before. Remember the INS Chakra, the Charlie class in the late 1980s? It was the country's first real hands on experience with a nuclear boat. Then you got the INS Chakra, the Akula class from 2012 to 2021. Returned early after damage but gave India nearly a decade of nuclear sub operations. And those leases directly fed into India's indigenous nuclear submarine program. It's the ballistic missile submarines that gave India a sea based nuclear deterrent. And this new lease with Russia is probably going to be the third chapter in that story. So, on paper, you have India that has the following submarines. You got 17 diesel electric submarines in service. Then, of course, the indigenous nuclear ballistic missile subs, long abbreviation SSBNs for strategic deterrence. So, now why pay Russia for another nuclear powered attack submarine? Because nuclear submarines are in a different league. They're bigger, they're faster, and they can stay submerged for months and not just a mere few days. They're also quieter, they're harder to track, especially in places like the huge Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific region. Remember, a nuclear attack submarine is designed to hurt enemy submarines and ships, shadow carrier groups, and guard sea lanes. So, effectively, this Russian lease acts like a bridge. It trains Indian crews on high and nuclear end submarines. It lets India refine their doctrines, maintenance, and operations. Then, the other part, it buys time while indigenous nuclear attack submarines move from the drawing board to dock. And let me tell you in simple words, because you don't need to learn nuclear submarine warfare on a simulator. You shouldn't do it. You need to learn it at sea, on a real submarine, on a real boat. And let's also look at the timing. Look at the calendar. Putin arrives in Delhi for the 23rd India Russia annual summit. It's happening right when the US is pressurizing India to cut Russian oil imports. Folks, Washington has slapped tariffs of up to 50% on Indian goods, plus an additional 25% secondary tariff tied to Russian oil. And Moscow is negotiating Ukraine peace terms with Trump's envoys. And then we also have, in the middle of all of this, India now signs a decade-long nuclear submarine lease with Russia. And it sends three unmistakable signals. One is strategic autonomy over alignment, because India is essentially telling the West, we'll work with you on tech and the Indo-Pacific, but the defense and the energy decisions are going to be ours. Second is that Russia remains a critical defense partner, and India may have diversified, but for nuclear submarines, you got the S-400 and the S-500, of course, the BrahMos, and other reactor tech. In all of this, Russia still holds a very unique category. The third factor, of course, is the oil equation, which is non-negotiable because Modi and Putin are expected to explore numerous ways to keep Russian oil flowing and push bilateral trade toward $100 billion by 2030. That's going to happen regardless of US pressure. And this submarine deal is one lever in a much larger energy security and tariff triangle. On the streets, Vladimir Putin's visit feels like a mini festival because in Varanasi, people held an India-Russia friendship march with posters, drums, and even aarti before Putin's photo. In Odisha, artist Manas Kumar Sahu created a detailed sand animation welcoming him. And in Delhi, of course, is on lockdown mode. You got 5,000 plus police, SWAT teams, snipers, anti-drone units, sanitized routes, and a secret stay location. So politically, the tensions are quite high. Of course, the opposition says that visiting leaders avoiding the leader of opposition breaks long-standing convention. Rahul Gandhi calls it insecurity, and a joint operation in a joint op-ed by UK, France, and Germany criticizing India's stance on Ukraine, sort of drew a sharp rebuttal from the government, calling it unacceptable. So while the streets celebrate and Delhi's diplomatic corps is balancing a careful line between Moscow, Washington, and Europe, what truly does India really gain from this deal? One, of course, is training for the nuclear submarine era because these lead submarines, again, I'm going to repeat, cannot be used in combat. But what it can is train crews, test your doctrines, and refine nuclear submarine operations. It's going to be as essential as India's third ballistic missile submarine entering service and two indigenous nuclear attack submarines moving forward. And the Russia SSN helps India perfect the human and the operational side even before its own fleet arrives. And we're also going to talk about a stronger undersea deterrence because with China increasing patrols in the Indian Ocean and the AUK US adding US UK nuclear submarines to Australia, India can't rely on diesel boats alone. A leased SSN gives India an immediate hunter killer platform and complicates adversary planning inside the region. What this also gives is more leverage with Russia because Russia gets hard earned currency and long term maintenance contracts, and India gains bargaining power on S 500 talks, fighter upgrades, and space cooperation and cooperation on rare earth technology. Because once nuclear submarines enter the relationship, India is no longer just going to be a buyer, it becomes a strategic partner. The deal, folks, isn't just nostalgia, it does come with real risks that are worth mentioning. Take a look at the operational safety risk because India's last leased Akula sub sort of suffered major damages and was returned early in 2021 because nuclear submarines are unforgiving. One accident can set the entire program and public support back towards years. And of course, this somewhere signals a dependence on Russia. We'll talk about diversification, but India still relies on Moscow for nuclear submarines, key air defense systems, and certain missile technologies. But if Russia drifts closer to Beijing, that dependence is going to turn into vulnerability. And of course, the other factors with Trump tightening tariffs and Europe hardening its stance, every major Russia deal tests India's diplomatic balance because New Delhi must keep explaining that strategic autonomy isn't anti West, it's pro India. The bottom line here is that no Western nation is offering our country, India, a nuclear powered attack submarine on lease. France and the United States are open to cooperation, but the AUK US has monopolized their bandwidth. And you got Russia, despite its troubles, still offers something almost no one else can, which is a mature nuclear submarine technology on terms that India can actually accept. So, what does this mean? What does this $2 billion submarine really signal? It says India will not outsource its security choices to Washington, Brussels, or Beijing. It says that the Indo-Russia relationship, born in 1955, is now again newly being rewritten for a world of tariffs, sanctions, and the AI-fueled wars. And it says that beneath all noise, India is quietly building the one thing that really matters in the Indian Ocean century, which is credible, survivable, and undersea power. So, from friendship marches in Varanasi to sand art in Odisha, and of course from SWAT teams in Delhi to nuclear reactors deep below the waves, Putin's visit is not just about photo operations. It's about whether India can walk its own path between a declining Russia, a nervous West, and a rising China, and still come out stronger in the bargain. So, folks, let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching. Of course, this is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. Tonight's segment of Front Page starts with 3 words from Las Vegas, United States. Because why not? That's the theme of AWS reInvent event from 2025. Watching AWS CEO Matt Garman speedrun 25 announcements in 10 minutes by the end of this keynote, you could almost sense and feel the emotion. If there's a crazy thing that customers want, AWS will probably build it. Because why not, as I said? Behind the meme tagline is something more dangerous for the rest of the big tech. Because Amazon's customer obsession is now pointed straight at frontier reasoning, AI agents, and custom silicon in a way that could seriously hurt the competition. Before we dive deep, like, share, and subscribe, because why not? Sorry, I had to do that again. And you do not want to miss this one because let's be honest, on the Gen AI chatbot hype cycle, AWS was a tad bit late. While Microsoft and Google plastered AI on every slide and product, Amazon quietly shipped infrastructure and let everyone joke that, oh, AWS missed Gen AI. But this week, at the reInvent event, they answered everything in one line. The next 80 to 90% of enterprise AI value is going to come from AI agents. So, what does this mean? Instead of copying Copilot or Google's Gemini, AWS is going one layer deeper. You got the Nova models as the Frontier family, Nova Forge as the Frontier model factory, Trainium 3 and Trainium 4 as the silicon backbone for AI. Then, of course, you got the Agent Core platform and Frontier agents as the operating system for long running AI workers. Not to forget the Kiro vibe coding Agentic IDE that stole the show on the stage. It's almost like AWS didn't just crash the party late, they walked in late with the sound system, the power backup, and the bartender rocking the party. And here's why this should and probably most likely will scare the rivals. Take a look at the numbers. In Q3 2025, AWS did roughly $33 billion in revenue. That's 20% growth year on year and its fastest growth since 2022. And it delivered nearly 60% of Amazon's, the parent company's total operating income. When you have a cash engine like that, it's used to fund a very specific strategy, which is say yes to any hard, unglamorous problem so that big customers bring to them. And of course, with that, build deep, boring, but brutal infrastructure around it. Do what then? Undercut everyone on the price performance over time. Because at the event, that because why not line that I told you, it's more of an instinct that showed up in every element. Why not let every Fortune 500 company train its own frontier class model on AWS Silicon? Why not turn data centers into AI factories for sovereign nations and mega enterprises? And why not publish an open multi-cloud specification with Google so AWS plus GCP can be wired together as one private high bandwidth fabric? For competitors, this is like a nightmare because you're not just fighting AWS, the cloud provider, you're fighting AWS plus every big customer's wish list. The quiet bombshell is about the Nova Forge because AWS calls it a first of its kind service to train and build frontier models, but with a twist. It introduces something called as the open training. It means access to pre-trained checkpoints where you blend in your proprietary data with Nova's curated datasets mid-training, not in fine-tuning. So in simpler terms, you get a frontier level brain, you take your enterprise data, put it in, inject it into the training loop. What do you end up with? You end up with a private model that understands your logs, your contracts, and your domain, lives inside your own virtual systems, still benefits from Amazon's ongoing model improvements. So when we talk about this seems very different from just slapping RAG on top of a closed API. Think of Infosys building a bedrock-based RAG systems for, let's say, oil and gas or drilling data. AWS now wants to give every enterprise a similar pattern, but at a frontier scale with Nova Forge doing the heavy lifting. What does that mean for customers? It means I want my model and along with my own brain. But for competitors, it means AWS is turning frontier training itself into a managed service. Where everyone else is talking about copilots, AWS is mostly talking about frontier agents because on one side you have the Amazon Bedrock Agent Core. Look, that's a platform to build, constrain, evaluate, and give memory to agents at a production scale. You got the other layer on top, which is AWS launching 3 frontier agents. You got the Kiro autonomous agent. It's a virtual developer agent that keeps persistent context across sessions, learns your own coding style, repositories, and reviews your own comments over time. It can work for hours or even days on a task before surfacing changes. Then number 2, you got the AWS security agent. It's like your embedded AI security consultant. Then you got the AWS DevOps agent. It's an on-call SRE team that's not human but AI. Think about it. Inside AWS itself, a DevOps agent is already hitting 86% root cause identification inside operations in production, collapsing MTTR from hours to minutes. Then the other component, you've got the Kiro IDE, last year's coding assistant that this year evolved into a full agentic development environment. So with that, you just don't autocomplete code. You're essentially delegating work. saying, refactor this service for latency, write tests and observability, and, raise PR also if possible. So if GitHub Copilot is autocomplete on steroids, you got Amazon's Kiro plus Frontier agents is almost like another developer sitting next to you who also never sleeps. But under all of this stack is the silicon. Remember, AWS at the event announced Trainium 3 Ultra servers and up to 144 Trainium 3 chips inside it, which is a single integrated systems, and this delivers 4.4 times more compute and 4 times better energy efficiency than the previous generation. Matt Garman also pre-announced the Trainium 4 with roughly 8 times the compute power of Trainium 2 with super high memory and bandwidth, squarely aimed at frontier scale training and ultra cheap inference. Then of course on the GPU side, you got the P6e GB300 Ultra servers that bring NVIDIA's GB300 NVL72 architecture to EC2 instances for trillion parameter inference workloads, all wired into the Nitro and the rest of the AWS stack. What comes next? What's on top? You got the AI factories. You got dedicated campuses with Trainium and NVIDIA GPUs along with the Bedrock and the SageMaker platforms. And these are deployed inside customers or sovereign data centers. It's also built for governments, national labs and hyperscale enterprises that want sovereign compute without giving up AWS tooling. And this is where it really hurts rivals like Google, because every time AWS ships a more efficient Trainium chip, it chips away the economics of, let's say, TPUs or third-party GPU clouds. Take a look at some of the customers. Sony is using Bedrock and Agent Core to power an internal AI platform for like 57,000 employees and a fan engagement platform that processes hundreds of terabytes of data across PlayStation, music, movies, and anime. Then you've got Adobe that's training Firefly powering Express, Acrobat Studio, Experience Platform, and the Gen Studio all on AWS infra, including the P-Series GPU instances and the Bedrock platform to push AI native creativity and marketing at scale. Then you've got a company called Writer. It's integrating Bedrock models inside its enterprise agent platform, adding a supervision layer so CIOs can now see exactly how agents behave before they go live. Let's look at it from an India lens. This stack is built for IT giants like the Infosys, who are already building generative AI RAG solutions on Amazon's Bedrock for sectors like oil and gas, which are now able to graduate those into Nova plus Agent Core and the Frontier agents. Then you've got mobility and logistics players like you've got Yulu style fleets who can use the Strands agents on the Edge plus Bedrock platform in the cloud for real-time dispatch pricing and your fleet health. Then you can think about, let's say, banks, telecom companies, or GCCs who want, let's say, a sovereign-friendly infra, probably multimodal choice. You got Nova, Mistral, Gemma, 12 labs, and all of those. Then you've got governed agents that they can actually explain to regulators. You might say AWS arrived a little too late to the Gen AI demo wars, but it might absolutely dominate the narrative of, let's say, put it into production and keep it alive for 10 years sort of a phase. So for Indian enterprises, this week's message from the Las Vegas is quite clear. You don't have to pick a single model. AWS is going to give you everything. You got Nova, Anthropic, Mistral, Gemma, and more, all in one single managed garden. And you don't have to own a 1 gigawatt data center either. You can rent Trainium, NVIDIA's GB300, or an entire AI factory as a service. And you also don't have to hand your IP to a closed API, because with Nova Forge and Agent Core, your data can live inside your VPC, your own region, and your compliance regime. So the real question now is not like, should we try AI agents? It's mostly like, which parts of our business are we brave enough to hand it to the agents first? That's exactly what we're going to decode next, because our own AIM Network tech journalist Sanjana Gupta is on the ground at the reInvent event. She's talking to AWS leaders, partners like Adobe and Writer, and of course, Indian customers who are already experimenting with Nova, Kiro, and Frontier agents. This is exclusive on-ground coverage. You definitely don't want to miss out how India Inc. plans to plug into AWS's new Agentic stack.
Together, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone. So So that what we just saw was a demonstration of literal tech debt crushing, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Looking forward to more from AWS, and I guess that was a great beginning to the conference. All right, hi, and thank you so much. It has definitely been amazing 3 jam-packed days here at AWS reInvent, and there's been amazing announcements around Agentic AI, around Kiro, and around a lot of different applications and layers in the Agentic AI stack. So definitely something to look forward to. We've had a lot of good interactions with the Agentic AI team at AWS, the partnerships team, and even an interaction with the CTO, Ankit, at Postman. So stay tuned and look forward to that. There's been a lot of buzz and talk around robotics. Around different startups that are present here that are working with AWS. So that's definitely something very exciting. And as you can see, there's a lot of networking happening here. Lot of people present and participating from different countries, different layers in the industry. So that's been an amazing journey till now, and we are looking forward to a lot more in the coming 2 days. With yesterday having Matt's keynote, today with Swami's keynote. So definitely we are looking forward to more tomorrow and day after. And yeah, stay tuned to know more and check out the upcoming interviews.
Hi, everyone. We launched a number of things here related to Kiro over the last couple of days, and I wanted to briefly update on those. Firstly, we've been looking at a couple of different areas. One is how can we help individual developers to more precisely build software? Another area is how can we help larger teams to work on a broad range of challenges that they're facing in their day-to-day work. And so for the individuals in Kiro, we've launched the Kiro Powers feature. With that, developers will be able to combine things like MCPs and steering rules and so on. And also Kiro Powers will dynamically load the context so that you don't end up with a lot of context rot and things like that. So it's a very powerful feature. A lot of our partners are building Powers, and you as individual developers can also build Kiro Powers and customize and enhance your Kiro experience. We've also launched 3 new frontier agents. First one is the Kiro Autonomous Agent, and then we have the security agent, and we have the DevOps agent. And these agents are helping throughout the development lifecycle. For example, security agent will allow you to catch security issues early on in the development, during your design even, and run pen tests for you much quicker than you would otherwise be able to do. So it's very powerful, hugely productive. Please come and check them all out.
Yeah, hi. I'm Kiran Jagannath. I'm a director for financial services and conglomerates at AWS India and South Asia.
All right. So how are you feeling here at reInvent, and how has the experience been until now with all the announcements that are coming out around, the Agentic AI stack and everything? How's it been?
Oh, it's always super exciting to be at reInvent. The energy is just something that you don't really get to express it. You need to really feel it to understand what I'm talking about when I say the energy is through the roof out here. So it's amazing. It's great to see all the announcements. I hope people are following it because it's been super exciting. I'm really excited about what Matt Garman actually in his keynote announced yesterday. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of the ones that truly, I'm excited to take back to my customers are what we announced in terms of the frontier agents that are going to help with security, DevOps, developer. I think that sounds pretty cool. And like everybody, by the way, I'm also digesting all the announcements that are coming out. So over the next few days, me and our teams, we will be looking at how we can take this to our customers. The other ones, of course, are the Nova Omni. That sounds really cool, where it's the first unified multimodal LLM out there that can understand the video, the context behind the video and
Yeah,
everything.
and
That's pretty exciting.
That's the requirement of today, right? In
Yeah.
terms of the shift that we're moving to. It's not just
Absolutely.
about a text LLM or something
Yeah.
that's generating audio, video. We need everything all together.
And the fact that it can look at it at the same time, like understand what the speaker is speaking and still understand what's behind them on the screen. I think that's super cool. I want to see how we can translate that to something meaningful for our customers in India. And AI factories, I mean, that was amazing. I think that will be again truly democratizing AI now for those customers who are still wanting to leverage some of these technologies within their data centers. I think that's going to bridge that gap for such customers. And from a non-AI perspective, two things stood out for me. AWS Transform. I think, modernization, reducing tech debt continues to be the focus, and the ability to do it 5x faster. I think that's pretty cool. And something that, showcases our DNA of continuing to listen to our customers. It's not a launch, but the database savings plan, I think that was something that our customers were asking for a long time. So I'm really glad that we can bring something to them that saves up to some 35% of the database costs.
Right. I think even I was quite excited about the AI factories part of it.
Yeah.
Because, until now I've been covering the AI factories part of it from like NVIDIA's side, and something that they announced and they're building as well. So to know that, that's something that other companies are also looking into and talking about the need for, compute and data centers. I think that's really good to know. Considering you're based out of Bangalore and, we're talking about the Indian ecosystem here, in terms of partnerships and, going forward, considering the newer announcements as well, what can we look forward to in the Indian enterprise sector?
Yeah, I think all of these, are available for our customers in India to leverage, right? I mean, some of these can be leveraged by the customers fairly immediately, the ones who can use these technologies from other regions, and some of the other industries will have to wait for us to bring it to India. I think that will sort of become available fairly soon, I hope. And that's something that we need to wait to see because we do sort of release these in a rolling fashion to regions outside of the US. So I think there's the next step truly is to digest everything, come up with use cases that can be accelerated with these new launches. And there's a whole bunch of them. And like I said, we usually launch these things keeping in mind what the customers are asking. So it's just a matter of tying these two together and making an impact for our customers.
Have you had any, out of curiosity, any good examples from India where you felt like, okay, this is a customer that needs this and we need to bring that out?
Yeah, like AI factories, for example. That is a big need in quite a lot of regulated industries. Industry customers who are not yet comfortable bringing some PII, personally identifiable information, to the public cloud. Now, these customers, were reliant on procuring some of these technologies on their own and trying to work with that. Now they can leverage all the innovations we are bringing to the cloud by, leveraging the AI factories. I think that will be very interesting to see what that will open up for customers in India as well.
That's actually quite exciting. I'm looking forward to that part of it. I think Agentic AI is also something that's, as much as it's important, it's been on that, wave of the hype. Also, in terms of just talking about it. But I feel the hardware and the compute part is equally important, because even for running APIs, testing the Agentic AI, running the Agentic AI all requires compute, right? So,
and how about having an Indian customer featured on Swami's keynote? I think was pretty
definitely. That was amazing. Yeah.
Interesting, where he talked about Dun and what Dun India is doing, building their small language model, leveraging the Indian capital market data and running it all on one GPU. I think it was a pretty cool moment to see our customers featured on Swami's keynote. So that was exciting.
Definitely. That was something that was, exciting to me as well, to see that, okay, this is India as a market is something that's making an impact in a larger global sense as well. Yeah. All right. I think, thank you so much. And great sitting with you and getting a small insight into, what's happening here at AWS.
And look forward to more announcements over the next 36 hours.
Definitely looking forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.